The world's leaders gathered in an emergency virtual summit while their nations descended into chaos. President Morales of the United Nations Security Council spoke first, her voice steady despite the circumstances. We need a unified response. These Navari have technology beyond our comprehension, but they've shown restraint. That suggests they're open to negotiation. Dr. Elena Reyes watched the broadcast from her laboratory at the Berkeley Xenobiology Institute. At 36, she'd spent her career studying theoretical alien biology, earning more ridicule than respect. Now, as footage of the crystalline invaders played on every screen, she felt a strange mix of validation and terror. Their movements, she whispered, recording observations on her tablet. Too precise, too efficient. She zoomed in on a Navari commander directing the neutralization of a military base. Unlike the chaotic human evacuation, with people running in all directions, the aliens moved in perfect geometric formations, their translucent bodies catching sunlight in hypnotic patterns. Across town, Marcus Chen watched the same footage in a veteran support center. The former Special Forces operator noted details others missed. The aliens' weapons fired at exact 3-second intervals. Their formations never deviated from perfect symmetry, and they seemed momentarily confused when civilians behaved unpredictably. They're running a program, he muttered to himself. No improvisation. The Navari's global broadcast repeated every 6 hours. Their leader, a taller being with more complex crystalline patterns, spoke in flawless English synthesized from intercepted communications. People of Earth, we require access to the mineral you call rare earth elements, particularly what we term xanthium. Your civilization has no critical use for these resources, while ours cannot survive without them. We will extract these elements with minimal disruption if you cooperate. Resistance is inefficient and unnecessary. By day 3, militaries worldwide had attempted conventional responses. Fighter jets disintegrated against energy shields. Tanks melted into puddles of slag. Nuclear deterrents failed to launch, their systems elegantly hacked. Yet Elena noticed something peculiar during a raid on San Francisco. A street performer had continued his routine despite evacuation orders, juggling flaming batons while reciting poetry. The approaching Navari patrol halted, their formations briefly disrupted as they processed this unexpected behavior. The delay lasted only seconds, but it was enough for civilians to escape. She began recording every such incident. A child's impromptu game of hopscotch. A flash mob in Madrid singing while Navari tried to establish a perimeter. A stray dog running circles around alien troops in Bangkok. Each time, the same result, momentary confusion in the perfect alien machine. Meanwhile, Jamal Williams huddled with other students in University of Chicago dormitory basements. An engineering prodigy with perfect pitch, he noticed the Navari communications produced subtle harmonics that made his teeth ache. Out of boredom and fear, he began counterpointing these frequencies on his modified synthesizer. "Guys, check this out," he called to his friends as a Navari scout passing outside suddenly stuttered in its movement, antenna-like appendages vibrating uncomfortably. 7 days after first contact, humanity learned the true nature of Navari minimal disruption when extraction machines the size of skyscrapers descended from the motherships. They began boring into the earth at strategic locations, the ground trembling for miles around. Refugee crises erupted worldwide as people fled extraction zones. Governments that had initially advocated cooperation now faced popular uprisings as the aliens' true impact became clear. Dr. Elena Reyes packed essential research equipment into her hybrid car, abandoning her comfortable university position. Her destination: an abandoned no-aid facility where other scientists had begun gathering. She'd seen enough to form a hypothesis about the invaders, one that might offer humanity its only chance. What she couldn't know was that across the country, Marcus Chen and Jamal Williams were independently reaching similar conclusions. Humanity's greatest strength against the perfect alien machine might be our beautiful, chaotic imperfection. Alina's underground laboratory hummed with salvaged equipment. The abandoned subway maintenance tunnel provided both shelter and a perfect observation post beneath a Navari patrol route. Her wall displayed hundreds of time-stamped notes and video clips, connected by red string in an increasingly complex web. Day 87 of occupation. She recorded, voice low despite the soundproofing. Navari Patrol Delta 6 passes this location precisely every 4 hours. Their route never varies by more than 30 centimeters, even when obstacles are introduced. She reviewed footage from her microdrones, tiny camera systems disguised as insects that followed Navari patrols. Yesterday's experiment had yielded fascinating results. She'd programmed a city billboard to suddenly display rapidly changing images. The 4 Navari in view had simultaneously paused for 1.3 seconds, enough time for her to isolate their neural response on thermal imaging. They experience a processing lag when presented with unpredictable stimuli, she muttered, circling the reaction time in her notes. The more chaotic the input, the longer the lag. 200 miles away, Marcus Chen led a rescue operation beneath the ruins of Kansas City. His team of 12 former soldiers, police officers, and surprisingly effective civilian volunteers moved through the rubble with practiced silence. Their target, a makeshift human detention center where the Navari collected workers for their mining operations. Remember, Marcus whispered to the team, pattern disruption on my signal. Nothing they can predict. When they reached the perimeter, instead of the expected stealth approach, Marcus gave a hand signal. His team immediately broke into seemingly random actions. 2 members began an impromptu dance routine with exaggerated movements. Another threw handfuls of reflective confetti into the air. Others ran in deliberate but chaotic patterns, while making bird calls and singing fragments of pop songs. The Navari guards froze momentarily, their sensors overwhelmed by the unpredictable input. Marcus timed it with precision minus 4.6 seconds of confusion before they would adapt. Just enough time to disable the security grid and breach the compound. The trick, he explained later to the 53 rescued captives, is never repeating the same method twice. They learn patterns instantly, but creating new ones on the fly. That's human specialty. Meanwhile, in the basement of Rhodes Hall at the University of Chicago, Jamal Williams had transformed the maintenance room into a sound laboratory. Using equipment salvaged from the music department, he analyzed recordings of Navari communications, breaking them down into frequency components. This harmonic pattern repeats in all their transmissions, he explained to his small group of fellow students. It's like their version of syntax, but based on crystalline resonance. He demonstrated by playing a modified version of the frequency through his experimental speaker array. The crystalline fragment he'd salvaged from a damaged Navari drone vibrated violently before developing hairline fractures. Their neural pathways are literally crystalline, Jamal said, excitement building, which means they're subject to resonance principles. Hit the right frequency, and we disrupt their thinking, completed Lisa Chen, a quantum physics major. But wouldn't they adapt their shielding? Eventually, Jamal nodded. But that's where this comes in. He revealed an algorithm on his laptop. This continuously modifies the frequency pattern based on ambient sound. No 2 disruption sequences are ever identical. Lisa looked skeptical. How do we distribute this? The internet's monitored. Communications are down. Jamal smiled and held up a modified smartphone. Old school. Bluetooth mesh networking. The algorithm spreads device to device, automatically updating as it goes. Anyone with a speaker and a phone becomes a node in the resistance. As night fell across the occupied Earth, 3 separate discoveries were moving humanity toward the same revelation. The invincible conquerors had a critical vulnerability. Their perfect logical efficiency made them unexpectedly fragile when faced with humanity's most defining quality, our gloriously inconsistent, adaptable, creative minds. In her subway lab, Alina stared at her final computation. Probability of Navari neural architecture containing analog to human lateral thinking, less than 0.003%. She smiled for the first time in months. We don't need to outgun them. We need to outthink them. Sideways, Elena barely escaped the raid on her underground laboratory, crawling through maintenance shafts as Naveri search drones scanned methodically behind her. The crystalline fragment she'd salvaged was wrapped carefully in lead-lined cloth, tucked into her backpack alongside her precious research notes. 2 days of cautious travel brought her to an abandoned theater in what had once been the arts district. The marquee, now dark and partially collapsed, still advertised Improvisation Night. Expected even unexpected. Elena smiled at the irony as she approached the hidden entrance. Password. Came a whisper from behind the collapsed ticket booth. There was no password, Elena replied, following the protocol she'd received through the Resistance network. Predictability is death. Inside, the grand old theater had transformed into a buzzing hub of Resistance activity. The stage hosted a strange mix of scientists with makeshift lab equipment, artists creating bizarre visual displays, and fighters practicing erratic combat movements. In the orchestra pit, engineers assembled devices from salvaged components, while the balcony had become a communications center with jury-rigged antennas and monitors. Professor Haruki Tanaka, once a renowned neurobiologist, now greeted Elena with relief. Your findings on Naveri neural architecture confirm our observations, he said, leading her to a workstation. We've been collecting data from resistance cells worldwide. Look at this. He displayed a map showing resistance successes and failures globally. A clear pattern emerged. Operations involving unpredictable elements succeeded 83% more often than conventional approaches. The Seattle cell used street performers as cover for their raid, Haruki explained. The Caro team incorporated random musical elements into their communications. The Sydney group constantly changes their operational schedule based on dice rolls. Elena nodded, unsurprised. They've evolved for computation, not interpretation. Their neural pathways follow crystalline structures, perfect for processing, but rigid in design. She carefully unwrapped her salvaged fragment. Under digital microscopy, the crystalline neural tissue revealed its secrets. Perfect lattice structures with incredible processing capacity, but minimal interconnectivity between functional regions. Their brains are essentially quantum computers, Elena explained to the gathered scientists. Incredibly powerful, but fundamentally different from ours. They can process 1 trillion calculations instantly, but ask them to interpret a poem. And they crash, completed Haruki, understanding dawning. That's why the resistance unit in Tokyo reported Naveri confusion during the Cherry Blossom Festival. The aesthetic appreciation overwhelmed their processing. Across the room, a communications officer interrupted with excitement. We've established contact with Marcus Chen's team in the Midwest. They've been using tactical unpredictability with extraordinary success. And there's more. A university group in Chicago has developed some kind of sonic disruption technology. The news electrified the room. For the first time, scattered resistance efforts were connecting, sharing their discoveries about the invaders' weaknesses. That evening, Elena addressed the assembled resistance fighters from the theater's stage, her voice echoing through the once grand space. The Naveri aren't invincible, she said, confidence growing with each word. They're different. They evolved for perfect logic in a predictable environment. But Earth isn't predictable. Humanity isn't predictable. Our greatest weakness, our chaotic nature, is actually our greatest strength against them. She displayed her findings on the theater's ancient projection screen. Their neural structure can't process rapid contextual shifts. They can't understand metaphor or irony. They don't comprehend aesthetic value. They can't improvise effectively. Elena smiled, a plan forming. We don't need better weapons. We need more humanity, more art, more unpredictability, more of what makes us who we are. From the back of the theater, a voice called out. You're saying we fight aliens with interpretive dance and poetry? Among other things, Alina replied with absolute seriousness. And for the first time since they arrived, I believe we might actually win. Jamal's arrival at the theater headquarters changed everything. The lanky student carried his equipment in a battered guitar case, looking more like a musician than the engineering prodigy he was. Alina and Marcus watched with fascination as he unpacked his harmony disruptors, elegant devices cobbled together from salvaged electronics and audio equipment. The principle is simple, Jamal explained, connecting components on the stage where actors once performed Shakespeare. Naveri neural pathways resonate at specific frequencies. These devices generate counter-frequencies that create interference patterns in their cognitive processing. He activated a prototype, and a barely perceptible hum filled the air. To us, it's just annoying background noise. To them, it's like trying to solve complex equations while someone screams random numbers in your ear. Marcus picked up one of the smaller devices, admiring its compact design. How long does the effect last? Only about 20 seconds before their adaptive algorithms compensate, Jamal admitted. But that's where this comes in. He revealed a small module attached to each disruptor. This continuously modifies the output pattern based on ambient sound. No two disruption sequences are ever identical. Alina immediately grasped the implications. So they can't develop a single countermeasure because the attack keeps changing. It's brilliant. Within days, resistance cells worldwide received instructions for building the disruptors from common electronics. The components were simple enough that even occupied territories could assemble them from scavenged parts. The resistance planned their first global test, simultaneous activation in Tokyo, Cairo, and Buenos Aires. Marcus coordinated the tactical elements, ensuring each team had multiple escape routes and contingency plans. Remember, we're not trying to defeat them in direct combat. We just need to confirm the technology works across different Naveri units. Alina monitored the operations from the theater's communications center, heart racing as the countdown approached. Tokyo team in position. Cairo ready. Buenos Aires standing by. At precisely 1400 UTC, all three teams activated their disruptors. The effect exceeded expectations. In Tokyo, Naveri patrols froze mid-step, their crystalline forms vibrating visibly as the harmonic interference disrupted their neural functions. In Cairo, two alien commanders actually collided with each other, their perfect coordination shattered by the sonic attack. And in Buenos Aires, a Naveri extraction team abandoned their equipment entirely, retreating in what humans might call confusion. It works, Alina exclaimed, watching the live feeds. All three locations report success. The celebration was short-lived. Within hours, Naveri patrols worldwide appeared with modified helmets, their external sensors now shielded against sonic attacks. They've adapted, Marcus observed grimly. Just as we expected. But Jamal simply grinned. So we adapt faster. He was already sketching modifications to his design. Their shielding only works against the specific frequencies we used. If we shift to visual disruption combined with sonic elements. Alina joined him at the workbench, adding her expertise. And we could incorporate randomized timing patterns. Their predictive algorithms would struggle with truly stochastic triggers. Marcus watched them work, a slow smile spreading across his face. You know what they can't shield against? Human adaptability. By the time they solve one approach, we'll have 3 new ones ready. The Resistance's greatest advantage was becoming clear, not the specific technologies they developed, but the speed with which they evolved them. While the Naveri responded with methodical, logical countermeasures, humans threw spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck, pivoted instantly when something failed, and celebrated imperfect solutions that were good enough for now. As teams worldwide reported on the Naveri's adaptive countermeasures, Alina realized they'd discovered something fundamental about this war. They're fighting the last battle, she told the assembled resistance leaders. We're already planning the next one. The resistance network evolved with astonishing speed. When Alina compared their current organizational chart to the one from just 2 weeks ago, She barely recognized it. Cells restructured daily, communication protocols shifted hourly, and tactics emerged and disappeared like bubbles in boiling water. "Beautiful chaos," she murmured, studying the seemingly random connections that somehow formed a resilient whole. Marcus stood beside her, observing the digital map where resistance activities flickered like fireflies around the globe. "The Neveri just raided our London hub," he noted, pointing to a flashing red indicator. "And 3 new cells have already absorbed those operations," Alina replied. "The network just adapted." Dr. Haruki approached with fresh analysis. "We've collated data from resistance operations worldwide. Neveri response effectiveness has dropped 62% in the past month. They're committing more resources to predict our actions, but their success rate keeps declining." Elena wasn't surprised. The resistance had abandoned all fixed structures, all predictable patterns. They operated now on principles borrowed from natural systems: emergent behavior, swarm intelligence, and evolutionary adaptation. "It's like trying to predict where a specific ant in a colony will be tomorrow," she explained to new recruits. "You can model the colony's behavior broadly, but individual elements remain fundamentally unpredictable." In Detroit, resistance fighters painted bizarre optical illusions on their equipment that confounded Neveri visual processing. In Rio, they incorporated random dance movements into combat maneuvers. In Nairobi, communications used ever-changing slang that translation algorithms couldn't keep pace with. The Neveri response proved telling. Each day, they deployed increasingly complex countermeasures to yesterday's tactics, always one step behind the constantly evolving human approach. Marcus received reports from field operatives with growing optimism. The Kyoto team says Neveri extraction efficiency has dropped below 40% of initial rates. They're burning more resources on security than they're gaining from the minerals. Alina understood the implications immediately. The Neveri operate on cost-benefit analysis. They invaded Earth because the equation favored them. If we keep disrupting their operations, we change the math. Marcus completed. Make Earth too expensive to conquer. Jamal, who had been listening silently, finally spoke up. "It's not just about tactics. It's about who we are." He gestured to the theater around them, where dancers practiced alongside engineers, poets collaborated with hackers, and artists worked beside soldiers. "The Neveri evolved in a stable environment that rewarded computational precision," he continued. "But humans evolved through ice ages, floods, droughts, and countless disasters. Adaptability isn't just our strategy. It's literally written into our DNA." This insight sparked Alina's most ambitious theory yet. She spent 3 days analyzing Neveri behavior patterns, comparing them to human evolutionary psychology. Her conclusion transformed their understanding of the war. "The Neveri aren't evil," she announced to the resistance leadership. "They're specialists who evolve for computational efficiency. But specialists are vulnerable when conditions change. Humans, by contrast, are generalists. Not the best at anything, but capable of everything." She displayed her analysis on the main screen. Every specialized species in Earth's history eventually faced environments that changed too rapidly for them to adapt. When that happened, the generalists survived while the specialists perished. Marcus understood immediately. "So we don't need to defeat them militarily." "Exactly," Alina nodded. "We just need to change the environment faster than they can adapt. Create conditions where our generalist nature thrives and their specialist nature struggles." The Resistance Council sat in thoughtful silence, processing this profound shift in perspective. They weren't just fighting invaders, they were creating an environment where the invaders' very nature became their greatest weakness. Operation Kaleidoscope launched with beautiful disorder. No commander directed it centrally. Instead, each cell received one simple instruction: be unpredictable, even to other resistance cells. In Barcelona, street performers suddenly transformed their acts into disruption events, their seemingly nonsensical movements creating patterns that overwhelmed Neveri sensory arrays. The aliens responded by deploying specialized art analysis drones, only to find the performers had already switched to scientific lectures delivered while juggling flaming objects. The Sydney Harbor team launched decoy extraction machines that emitted false mineral signatures, sending Neveri collection teams on resource-wasting expeditions. When the aliens developed signature verification protocols, the Resistance switched to hacking the verification systems themselves, creating ghost readings that appeared and disappeared randomly. Each cell documented their tactics and results in the shared Resistance database, not to be repeated but to inspire new variations. The system operated like a creative evolutionary algorithm. Successful approaches bred new iterations while failed tactics faded away naturally. Alina monitored the Neveri communications they managed to intercept. "Listen to this," she told Marcus and Jamal, playing a translated exchange between alien commanders. Extraction efficiency delta has fallen to 32.4% of optimal. Human resistance activities follow no discernible pattern, requesting additional computational resources to develop predictive models. Request denied. Computational resources already at maximum allocation. Supreme Command requires explanation for continued inefficiency. Explanation. Humans appear to be deliberately operating contrary to optimal efficiency parameters. Their actions prioritize unpredictability over effectiveness. Analysis. Irrational. Continuing surveillance. Alina couldn't help but smile. They can't conceive of deliberately choosing inefficiency as a strategy. It violates their fundamental operating principles. Jamal nodded, understanding. It's like they're playing chess, calculating the perfect moves, while we're flipping the board and inventing new games every 5 minutes. The Resistance introduced another layer to Operation Kaleidoscope, human culture as encryption. Communications began incorporating song lyrics, movie references, inside jokes, and cultural allusions indecipherable to the aliens. A message like, "The eagle has rosebud at midnight, feeling lucky punk," carried clear instructions to humans who shared cultural context, but appeared as nonsensical noise to Neveri surveillance. Marcus received reports from the field with growing excitement. The Tokyo team intercepted Neveri resource allocation data. They've tripled security forces while extraction rates have fallen below 25% of initial projections. The equation is shifting, Alina noted, updating their cost-benefit models. If this continues, the invasion becomes mathematically unjustifiable by their own standards. The Resistance's human-centered approach extended beyond tactics to recovery and morale. Unlike the Neveri, who discarded damaged units as inefficient, Resistance cells celebrated individual contributions and supported wounded members. Creativity was valued alongside effectiveness, with teams incorporating art, music, and storytelling into their daily operations. This contrast wasn't lost on careful Neveri observers. Intercepted communications revealed growing confusion among their analysts. Humans devote significant resources to activities with no extraction value. They create visual displays, auditory patterns, and physical movements serving no survival function. Yet these inefficient behaviors appear to increase their overall resilience and adaptive capacity. This contradiction requires further study. In her private journal, Alina wrote what she couldn't yet say aloud. Hope was growing that humanity might actually survive. Not by matching the invaders' technological might, but by being so fundamentally, unpredictably human that the perfectly logical aliens simply couldn't compute a winning strategy against them. Alina hadn't planned to have her breakthrough while recovering from injuries. The Neveri raid on their supply convoy had left her with 3 broken ribs and a concussion. Now confined to the medical bay, she found herself studying neural scans with fresh eyes. "Doctor, look at these activation patterns," she called to Dr. Haruki, pointing to comparative brain scans on her tablet. Human brains light up in these regions when processing metaphor or appreciating art. The Neveri neural structure shows no equivalent activation zones. Haruki studied the scans. They have incredible computational capacity, but nothing analogous to our brain's artistic centers. What are you suggesting? That art itself might be our most powerful weapon, Alina replied. Not just as a tactic, but as a neural disruptor. When Jamal visited her later, she shared her theory. His eyes widened with excitement. Like trying to run quantum physics equations on an abacus, he said. Their neural architecture simply isn't designed to process metaphor, beauty, or abstraction. The idea spread through the resistance like wildfire. Within days, Operation Kaleidoscope evolved into what resistance fighters called the Renaissance. Artists, musicians, dancers, and poets found themselves on the front lines of an unconventional war. In occupied Paris, street artists painted impossible optical illusions near Neveri checkpoints, causing alien sentries to visibly glitch when their visual processing attempted to resolve the unresolvable paradoxes. In Mumbai, resistance cells broadcast classical ragas with mathematical structures that created interference patterns in Neveri communication networks. In Mexico City, dancers performed movements based on chaos theory equations, their unpredictable yet patterned flows confounding alien prediction systems. The effects surpassed all expectations. Neveri, exposed to concentrated human creativity, displayed unprecedented behavioral anomalies. Some froze completely, unable to process the input. Others exhibited repetitive movements, caught in cognitive loops. Most significant were the younger Neveri, who began showing signs of neural adaptation, attempting to mimic human artistic behaviors and asking unexpected questions. Marcus brought the news to Alina's bedside. The Berlin team captured security footage from Neveri headquarters. You need to see this. The video showed a young Neveri officer standing motionless before a child's crayon drawing salvaged from an abandoned school. For 6 hours, the alien remained there, crystalline appendages vibrating in unusual patterns, occasionally reaching toward the drawing without touching it. This is happening everywhere, Marcus explained. They're encountering something their logical systems can't reduce to computation. The younger ones are changing. Intercepted Neveri communications revealed growing alarm among their leadership. Neural contamination spreading among tertiary units. Affected units display efficiency reduction and resource allocation errors. Contamination correlates with exposure to human symbolic systems, classified as art. Quarantine protocols ineffective as contamination appears mimetic rather than physical. As Alina recovered, she directed an ambitious project. Resistance cells worldwide began compiling humanity's greatest creative works: music, poetry, visual art, dance, storytelling, into what they called cognitive payload packages. These carefully structured combinations of artistic expression were designed specifically to challenge Neveri neural architecture. We're not just confusing them anymore, Alina explained to resistance leaders. We're forcing them to evolve or fail. Their rigid thinking worked perfectly in their original environment. But not here, not against us. They must adapt to understand us, or they can't effectively fight us. Jamal added the technical perspective. It's like we're uploading a new operating system to their neural networks, whether they want it or not. Some will crash, but others might actually run it. No one yet dared speak the most radical possibility aloud, that humanity might not just survive the Neveri, but fundamentally transform them through the contagious power of human creativity. The resistance intercepted the Neveri command transmission at 300 hours. Alina's face went pale as she translated the message for the gathered leadership. They're activating something called the Terminal Extraction Protocol, a weapon in high orbit designed to, her voice faltered, sterilize the planet's surface while preserving mineral deposits. Estimated deployment, 18 hours. Silence fell over the theater headquarters. After months of successful resistance, the Neveri had made their coldly logical decision. Earth had become too inefficient to conquer conventionally, so they would simply eliminate the complication. Jamal broke the silence. How do they communicate with the orbital platform? Quantum entangled transmission, Alina replied. We can't block it. But we could hijack it, Marcus suggested, leaning forward. Use their own network to broadcast our package. All eyes turned to the secure storage unit where the Resistance had assembled their masterwork. Operation Transcendence, a carefully engineered compilation of humanity's greatest creative achievements. Bach preludes mathematically interwoven with Kandinsky's abstract paintings. Poetry by Rumi and Maya Angelou, structured according to prime number sequences. Dance choreography based on fractal patterns, performed to jazz improvisations. Originally designed as a theoretical weapon, it now represented humanity's last hope. Can we access their command network? Elena asked. Jamal nodded slowly. The younger Naveri officer who defected last week provided authentication codes, but they'll only work for 7 minutes before security protocols adapt. 7 minutes to upload humanity's soul, Elena whispered. Then louder, prepare the package. As the Resistance team prepared the transmission, Elena addressed the Global Resistance Network one final time. This isn't just about survival anymore, she told them, her voice steady despite the stakes. We're fighting for the right to remain human, chaotic, creative, and wonderfully inefficient. If we fail, I want our last act to be the most human thing we've ever done. At exactly 1100 hours, with the orbital weapon powered to 87% capacity, Jamal's team hijacked the Naveri command network. The upload began. Humanity's distilled creative essence flowing into the crystalline neural network of their would-be destroyers. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Then reports began flooding in from around the world. Naveri units freezing in place, others moving in unpredictable patterns. Some appeared to be attempting to recreate human art forms with their own bodies, forming impossible crystalline shapes that glittered in the sunlight. Aboard the Naveri command ship, chaos erupted. The rigid hierarchy fractured as younger officers, already partially adapted to human creativity through previous exposure, experienced a cognitive renaissance. Their neural networks, faced with humanity's artistic expression, didn't crash but reconfigured, evolving in minutes what might have taken them millions of years naturally. The orbital weapon powered down at 93% capacity, 7% short of activation threshold. Elena watched in disbelief as the main view screen activated with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared belonged to a Naveri commander, but the crystalline features moved with unprecedented fluidity. Behind those alien eyes shone something new, the unmistakable spark of aesthetic appreciation. "We request dialogue," the commander said, the translation revealing unusual emotional modulation. "Your transmission has created understanding. We perceive differently now." Around the world, Naveri extraction operations halted simultaneously. The invaders who had come to strip Earth of resources now stood motionless, experiencing human art with newly evolved senses. "What happens now?" Marcus asked quietly. Elena watched the screen where the Naveri commander waited, its crystalline structure subtly shifting into more harmonious patterns. "We teach them. They teach us. We find a way forward that neither of us could have imagined alone." In that moment, humanity's victory came not from destroying their invaders, but from transforming them through the very qualities that made humans human. The final stand hadn't required violence at all, just the courage to share our most beautiful creations in the face of annihilation.